Hello everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Watch my video and subscribe my channel. Taylor is into a coma following a heart attack, and Ridge screams and says 6 things. Ridge Forrester had always thought he was prepared for anything. Divorce, betrayal, even death, but nothing could have prepared him for the moment when Taylor Hayes collapsed in front of him, clutching her chest in agony, her breath stolen by a sudden, massive heart attack that came not with a whisper but a roar that shattered the Forrester mansion's fragile evening peace. And as paramedics swarmed and Hope Logan clutched her phone trembling, Brooke Logan stood frozen in the doorway, the weight of decades of rivalry, love, and loss hanging in the air like thick fog, and Steffi Forrester, screaming for her mother, pressed her hands against Taylor's face as if warmth alone could call her back, and Thomas Forrester, pale as death, called Ridge's name with a childlike desperation he hadn't felt since the days their family first broke apart, and Ridge, his voice hoarse, whispered the 6 words that would come to haunt the entire family. "Don't leave me. Not like this." A plea torn from the very core of his being, a confession, a surrender, an unspoken admission that despite all the marriages, the fights, the betrayals, Taylor was a part of his soul, and as the ambulance doors slammed shut, carrying Taylor's lifeless yet still breathing body to University Hospital, the storm began. News traveled fast. Lee Finnegan was the first to meet them at the ER, ordering the team to clear a trauma bay, demanding full cardiac workup. Finn racing behind with Steffi at his side. Bill Spencer, arriving minutes later, demanding to know if Ridge had pushed her too hard with his endless triangle games. And Brooke, now torn between guilt and empathy, reached for Ridge's arm only to be shaken off as he barked. "Not now, Logan," his eyes red, his jaw tight, his heart cracking open with each second Taylor lingered in that sterile white room where monitors beeped and lives were decided. And as night bled into morning, the doctors emerged. Massive myocardial infarction, oxygen deprivation, medically induced coma to reduce brain swelling, uncertain prognosis, words that felt like ice water down the spine of every Forrester. And the waiting began, endless, cruel, suffocating, days blending into one another as Ridge refused to leave her side, whispering those same 6 words again and again. "Don't leave me, not like this," while memories flooded him. Aspen in the snow, their first kiss at the hospital years ago, the children's laughter, the betrayals he both suffered and caused, the missed chances, the apologies never made, the nights spent in Brooke's bed while Taylor waited at home with hope in her heart, and the guilt gnawed him raw, until he found himself alone in the chapel, knees buckling, whispering to God, "If she wakes up, I'll make it right." But fate in Los Angeles is rarely merciful, and as Taylor's coma stretched from days to weeks, the vultures circled. Sheila Carter, now on a fragile redemption arc, appeared with flowers, claiming she wanted to make amends. Steffi exploded, ordering her out, yet Finn hesitated. Hadn't Sheila once saved her? And Bill, nursing his own scars from losing Katie and nearly losing Liam, offered to pay for a top European cardiologist to fly in, but Ridge refused, determined to keep control, while Brooke tried to bridge the gap, insisting Taylor wouldn't want this war, only to have Steffi snap, "You've done enough." And in the shadows, Thomas plotted, if his mother never woke, Ridge might return fully to Brooke, and yet if she did wake, the balance could shift again, and in this endless limbo, everyone unraveled. Steffi neglecting Kelly and Hayes as she camped in the ICU, Hope torn between supporting Ridge and respecting Liam's warnings to stay clear, Liam himself wrestling with his own demons as memories of his near-death experience haunted him, and Finn, ever the doctor, delved into Taylor's medical file, discovering stress as a key factor, her heart weakened by years of emotional warfare between Brooke and Ridge, between duty and desire, and one night as Ridge dozed in a stiff chair beside her bed, her hand twitched, just a flutter, but enough to send the monitors beeping, the nurses rushing, and Ridge leapt to his feet, clutching that hand, tears streaming down his face as he whispered, "Don't leave me, not like this." For the 100th time, and maybe, just maybe, somewhere deep inside, Taylor heard him because her lips parted, breath hitched. But she did not wake, not yet, and so the war for her future raged on. Brooke visited daily, leaving roses. Steffi resented it. Thomas grew bitter. Eric tried to keep the peace. Donna wept quietly in hallways. Katie offered support. Bill grew suspicious. Was Ridge using this tragedy to martyr himself? And then came the will. A lawyer revealed Taylor had just revised her estate, transferring majority stake in a foundation to a mysterious trustee named R, rather than Ridge or the children. Marone. And murmurs began. Nick Marone, back in Italy, had communicated with Taylor prior to the attack, and Ridge's remorse turned to fear. Was she about to abandon him again? Had his silence and hesitation been the last straw that destroyed her heart? And as weeks turned to a month, the doctors warned. If she doesn't wake soon, the damage may be permanent. And that night, Ridge broke, collapsing beside her, laying his head on her chest, sobbing those 6 words louder than ever. Don't leave me, not like this. Unaware that outside, Brooke listened, tears streaming, whispering. Maybe he never stopped loving her. And far away, in a dimly lit office, Nick Marone received a call. She's still alive, but barely, and he set his jaw. He was coming to L.A. to fight for the woman he once saved at sea, and thus began a new storm of passion, regret, betrayal, and longing, all born from one heart's failure and 6 desperate words that would echo through the Forrester halls for generations. The days stretched like unending silk across the cold corridors of University Hospital as the Forrester family camped out in shifts. But Ridge never truly left the room, his presence a constant fixture beside the still form of Taylor Hayes, whose chest rose and fell with the rhythm of machines rather than the vibrancy of life, and though her hair was brushed and her face serene, her spirit felt a million miles away. And each sunrise mocked Ridge with another reminder that time was both his ally and his enemy. For as long as she lingered, hope lived. Yet each passing day whispered the threat of permanence, and the 6 words, "Don't leave me, not like this," became less a plea and more a mantra, a confession to the walls, the nurses, to God himself, as guilt curdled into obsession. And while the world outside moved on, Forrester Creations launching new lines, hope for the future battling scandal, Bill Spencer launching his crusade to expose Grace Buckingham's recent medical scam. Inside that room the air was thick with secrets, old wounds, and unresolved love. And then came the night Thomas Forrester lost control. Pacing outside the room with hope, his voice cracked. "She's like this because of them. Because of Brooke? Because of you people pushing her," his fingers stabbing the air as security hovered, ready to intervene, and Ridge, hearing the raised voices, stormed out, shoving Thomas against the wall. "This isn't about blame. This is about her heart." But even as he said it, he realized the truth. Hadn't he told Taylor just days before her breakdown that he was heading to Rome with Brooke? Hadn't he once again put her second, leaving her heart heavy with disappointment? Steffi, meanwhile, grew feral in her protectiveness, sending the nanny home, moving Kelly and Hayes into the hospital's family suite, refusing to let go. While Finn tried to be the voice of reason, "Steffi, stress will only worsen this for all of you." But his own eyes betrayed his fear, for he too had lost so much. Luna's supposed death, Lee's betrayals, Sheila's constant shadow, and now to see his wife fracturing was almost too much. And then, one stormy evening, a tall figure appeared in the ICU hallway. Nick Marone, salt still in his hair from a chartered yacht out of Tuscany, his jaw set, his eyes blazing as he approached the nurse's station, demanding to see Taylor. And when Ridge saw him, their old rivalry reignited like dry kindling in a match's spark. "You have no right to be here," Ridge snarled. But Nick held up a worn letter, its edges soft from years of reading. "She wrote me last month, told me she was done being second choice." And the hallway erupted, Steffi torn, between fury and confusion. Brooke whispering to Donna. She reached out to him again, and the story turned abruptly. Was Taylor's heart withering not only from physical strain, but also from the weight of loving a guy who never truly picked her? And as Nick pressed his hand to the glass, looking at her pale form, he whispered, "Come back to me, Doc!" And Ridge, hearing it, felt a white-hot spear of jealousy and shame twist inside him. For those were not his 6 words, and in that moment his own 6. "Don't leave me, not like this," felt selfish, almost cowardly, a cry to fix his own mistakes rather than to free her from pain, and so the war for Taylor's future deepened. Legal petitions over medical decisions, arguments about whether to transfer her to a facility in Genoa City where a new cardiac neurologist claimed a breakthrough. Eric Forrester urging peace. She needs calm, not chaos. Brooke offering to step aside entirely. If it means she wakes up with less pain, I'll go. And yet Steffi clung to Ridge. Don't let her slip away, Dad. While Thomas plotted to use Nick's return to his advantage. If Ridge fell, Thomas could step into power at Forrester. And amidst all this, the monitors told their slow story. Brain swelling, reducing, heart stabilizing, coma deepening into something less medically necessary and more mysterious, as if Taylor herself was choosing to drift, to decide whether to return to a life of endless tug-of-war or find peace elsewhere. And then, in the quiet hours before dawn, Ridge dozed again, hand wrapped around hers, when her fingers twitched once more and her lips parted, a faint whisper escaping, not his name, but something like, "Nick?" And Ridge's heart shattered anew because for all his 6 words, for all his tears, perhaps the last thought in her mind before the darkness was not him at all. And outside, the storm broke over Los Angeles, rain slicking the Forrester estate, Brooke standing alone on the balcony, whispering, he's going to lose her this time, while Bill, from his office, dialed a private investigator, find out everything about Marone's return if he thinks he can take her. He's got a Grace Buckingham's name surfaced in whispered conversation, her past scams, still fresh, and the possibility of foul play set the stage for a new war entirely. One where Ridge's 6 desperate words might become a vow not just to keep her alive, but to get her justice. The hospital air had grown stale with waiting, that kind of thick, heavy waiting that clung to walls and soaked into skin, until even the nurses began to whisper about the Forrester woman in room 417 who slept like a porcelain doll under sterile lights, while the titans of Los Angeles circled her bed like warring wolves. And Ridge Forrester, his beard now rough from sleepless nights, his designer shirts crumpled, his hands trembling with a kind of helplessness he rarely allowed the world to see, had become a fixture in that room, a silhouette against the window, muttering again and again those 6 hollowing words. "Don't leave me, not like this!" As if the repetition might somehow stitch her heart back together or rewrite the years that had led them here. But outside the room, life refused to. Pause. Steffi was unraveling, her anger boiling into every conversation. Why is Brooke even here? Why is Nick here? "This is our family, not their playground," she screamed, only to have Brooke answer calmly, "This isn't about me." And Thomas, who had started to see the fractures in his father's resolve, quietly began calling lawyers, because if Ridge fell apart now, Forrester Creations could fall into chaos. And in the middle of this storm, Nick Marone moved like a ghost returned from exile, his voice low, his presence commanding, reading to Taylor at night from old journals, touching her hair like a promise, while Ridge stood in the doorway, jaw tight, heart torn between fury and the gnawing terror. That maybe, just maybe, she had wanted him here all along instead. And then came Lee Finnegan, her face pale, her eyes flashing with that calculating brilliance that had once hidden her own son from death, holding a folder of scans. "Ridge, we need to talk," she said, and in a small conference room they pored over the images. The clot was irregular, the timing peculiar, the enzyme markers inconsistent. This was not a textbook heart attack, and Finn, joining them, whispered what none wanted to say, aloud. It could have been induced pharmacologically, and suddenly the world shifted. Who would want Taylor out of the way? Who stood to benefit if she never awoke? Fingers pointed in whispers. Grace Buckingham, with her history of medical scams, was in the building the day it happened. Brooke, though pale with genuine worry, still carried the shadow of being the eternal rival. Even Thomas wondered aloud if someone had tried to stop Taylor from revealing something. Some letter, some truth, perhaps about Ridge's secret dealings, perhaps about that mysterious call she made to Nick Marone before the collapse. And as these suspicions Taylor haze in mystery. Coma! And Bill Spencer, sensing blood in the water, used his media empire to dig deeper, calling Ridge late at night. "Tell me, Forrester, was it guilt or poison that put her there?" And Ridge, weary and raw, slammed the phone down, collapsing into the chair beside her, clutching her hand as dawn broke over Los Angeles, whispering his 6 words once more, softer this time, almost a plea to himself. "Don't leave me, not like this," because each day he spent by her side was another day his carefully built world crumbled. Brooke drifting, Nick scheming, Steffi fracturing, Thomas darkening, and deep inside, Ridge began to fear the one thing he had never admitted. That maybe this time, no matter how much he begged, Taylor might choose to let go, to slip away from a life that had given her so much heartache. And yet, in the deepest hours of the night, a miracle or a warning came. Her eyes flickered open, just for a breath, her lips moving soundlessly, and Ridge leaned in, thinking she might say his name. But what escaped was neither Ridge nor Nick, but a single, chilling syllable, "Lee." Before the monitor screamed and the nurses rushed, sedating her once more, and Lee, standing in the doorway, froze, because that meant Taylor knew something, had seen something before the darkness claimed her, something that could turn this entire tragedy into a revelation that would tear families apart. The days had become a labyrinth of whispers, clipped footsteps, and the unending hum of machines that kept Taylor Hayes tethered between life and death. And Ridge Forrester, once a man of action, a designer of empires and destroyer of hearts, was reduced to a sentinel of regret, sitting by her bedside as sunlight shifted across her pale face, repeating those same 6 words like an oath carved into his very soul. "Don't leave me, not like this." But the world outside that sterile room had lost patience with stillness, because in Los Angeles, silence is the loudest kind of scandal, and the whispers had grown into roars. Tabloids speculating sabotage, Steffi Forrester snarling at reporters to back off, Thomas pacing like a wolf with secrets gnawing at his belly, Brooke Logan torn between duty and retreat, and Nick Marone growing bolder, staying longer, bringing familiar music to play at her bedside, his voice soft as he murmured memories of Capri and Catalina, while Ridge stood in the doorway clenching his fists, torn between fury and the realization that he might lose her again, not to death, but to a past love resurrected in crisis. And then Lee Finnegan, who had been cataloging every anomaly, stepped into the room with a tablet in hand, her face grim. "Ridge, this isn't adding up." The onset of her cardiac enzymes was likely activated by a chemical catalyst. If the correct drug, untraceable after hours, was supplied, it would appear just like a heart attack. And Finn, who overheard, paled because the connotation was clear. This wasn't a failing heart, but an act, and the issue became, who would dare? The circle of suspicion widened. Grace Buckingham, already disgraced for her false surgery scam, had been in the same wing that night. A new nurse, hired only weeks before, vanished after her shift. Brooke, though devastated, was accused in tabloid columns of having motive. Even Sheila Carter, in the shadows of her supposed redemption, appeared at odd hours, leaving flowers without signatures, muttering prayers that sounded more like promises. And amidst this rising storm, Taylor stirred again, this time longer, her eyes fluttering, her fingers twitching, a weak squeeze of Ridge's hand, and though her voice failed her, a nurse placed a pen in her fingers, and she scrawled one trembling word on a scrap of paper. "Stop!" And when Ridge pressed her for more, she scratched a second. "Lee," and then her strength faded, alarms rang, and she slipped back under. But the damage was done, because now Ridge, torn between loyalty and suspicion, stared at Lee Finnegan with new eyes, and Lee, cold as a winter tide, said only, "I'm the one keeping her alive, Ridge." "Don't make this into something it isn't," he said, but his heart was racing with questions. Had Lee attempted to manipulate this circumstance in the same way she had Finn's fate? Was it about medical power or something much more personal? Meanwhile, Steffi's marriage to Finn began to fray under the weight of secrets. Hope Logan found herself drawn closer to Ridge as a confidant. Brooke considered leaving town entirely. Bill Spencer poured money into private investigations, and Nick Marone, sensing blood in the water, made a bold declaration at Taylor's bedside one night. "When you wake, Doc, I'll be here." Ridge's words, "Don't leave me, not like this," felt more like a confession than a promise. He had waited too long to truly choose her, and now the choice might be slipping through his fingers into another man's arms, or worse, into the grave. Despite her closed eyes, a nurse witnessed a tear slid down her cheek.